Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand, and I wanted to show you a project I created for calendars for the upcoming year, 2021. And you can get these mini calendars. I purchased some online, or you could even, there's some programs where you can print out your own and cut them to size. But I just purchased these online. Whatever country you're in, you'll have to look up a place that sells the mini calendars. However, usually you have to purchase them about 6 months in advance because they do sell out quickly. So I created this little project to hold a pen and a little notepad, and then you have the little calendar at the bottom. So it would sit, basically it would sit on your table kind of like that. Hopefully you can see it all. And so this one I did here is using the Magnolia Lane Designer Series paper, which is now retired. So I'm going to show you one with the current paper. This one, other than stamping on a few of the images on the pages of the calendar, there is no stamping involved. These flowers were cut from the Designer Series paper. So this one just used basic black, the Designer Series paper, and a little bit of petal pink for the date in the background. Everything else is die cut, and that's it. And so that shows both sides of it. And I will show you how to do this. So I'm going to use the current paper, which is, just a moment, it's In Good Taste Designer Series paper. And it has lots of interesting images. One side gives you kind of textural images, and the other side almost looks kind of like tiles, etc. So this is the paper here. It is current in the catalog, and there's all sorts of different images, wood and paint images, tiled images. It's a very versatile set. Has lots of different colors and shades. So I'm doing one with this paper to make it a bit more masculine, just to show you that you can change it up. So I'm using this side. There are two sides to every piece of Designer Series paper. I'm going to use this side, which has Whisper White and Night of Navy. So that's what the base is going to be. So for the base, I use the two largest Stitch So Sweetly dies. So this is a current die set, and so with that set, you get lots of different dies. Sorry, wrong name. No, Celebration Labels dies. That's the one I'm using. I am going to use the Stitch So Sweetly shortly, but this is the Celebration Labels dies, and so it comes with 5 different labels, and then it also has images that match up, like these match up bats that go with the matching stamp set. You can do, these could be leaves or even antlers for reindeer, and then some other little embellishments, some hearts and some little flourishes to cut out. I use these little ones here, and you get 4 of them, so you can do run it through once. So I use those to cut out the flourishes on the corners of the larger dies. But the largest die I used for the colored cardstock, and the second largest die I used for the Designer Series paper, because then it layers quite nicely there, and it gives you a stitched effect. Hopefully you can see there's a bit of stitching around the edges. And then this one on the inside, that's the one that I use the Stitch So Sweetly die, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so this part sitting up and this part lying flat are exactly the same, and you start out making them the same way. So I've already pre-cut those. So with the largest Celebration die, I cut 2 Night of Navy pieces. So if you're going to cut these, you need to cut down your cardstock to fit through the cutter, the cut and emboss machine, and I cut it down to 6 inches and then did it at a diagonal to run through, so I actually cut a 12 by 12 piece down as opposed to cutting the A4. And the designer series paper is the one size smaller, so you need 2 pieces of that, one size smaller. Now this, I believe I was able to cut it all from the A4, and it fit. Again, I did it diagonally to make it fit better. So to start off, and this one, because I'm doing it more masculine, I'm not going to put the little embellishments on the corners. If you wanted that, then you need to run it through with those dies on all 4 corners before you do the next step. But the next step is the same for both pieces. So we just need to adhere those into the center. And the easiest way to do that is with your glue. Now, if you're not aware of it, the Tombow is multi-purpose and it's double-sided. So a lot of people don't realize there's a bottom to it. So we've got the pointy top, and the bottom is a flatter end, a wide and bigger end. So you can use that. A bit sticky from last time I used it. And you get more out. And then you can just use the tip to kind of rub that around. So it's got kind of a angled tip, kind of like the glue I remember we had as kids at primary school. So that's a quick, easy way to get it to spread. And if you're having trouble getting your glue out the other end, sometimes as they get older, it's harder to get it out the other tip. That's another great way to do it. So you simply glue those pieces down, gives you a nice gap between the top and the bottom. Glue those into place. So the first step, they look identical. So whatever designer series paper you decide to use, just look on the package. It tells you which colors are used for that paper, and then just choose the complementary color to pick out. Now this was easy because it only had the Night of Navy. The other one, depending on which floral background I did, I could have done Petal Pink or Mossy Meadow, or the basic black, but I chose to go with the basic black. Okay, so they both start out the same way, and then out of the same background color I used this die, which is from the Stitch So Sweetly die set. You get a whole bunch of rectangular dies, and then you have some interesting shaped ones that also layer. So I use the largest of the different shaped ones to cut a piece of Night of Navy. And then I also used, and the reason I did that is it fits my calendar nicely. The other thing is you could just cut a rectangle. So whatever size calendar you have, measure it up and just add like half a centimeter or a 1/4 inch border around the whole thing. So that makes it stand out more on your background. But to save on paper, the other thing I did, I used the Playful alphabet dies, which you get all those different letters as well as numbers and symbols. So I used that to cut out my year, 2021, and I just simply cut that out from the inside of that section, because when you cover it up with your calendar, you're not going to see it. So instead of using another piece, or you could just use a scrap piece of cardstock to cut out your date. So that's another thing I did. Now, if you want to stamp on your calendar like I did with this one, I suggest you do it before you stick it down. I did this afterwards, but you can't get really close to the top edges because once it's glued down, the block will get in the way. So if you want to stamp some images on there, you can do that before sticking it down. Now, these two are identical. To get the one to hold the paper and pen, you then need to fold it. Now, what I found best is, first of all, whichever pen you're using, so I've just got these inexpensive little white pens, measure up your pen to see how wide it is. So I know that this is actually 1 centimeter wide, or you can just put it on your paper. This is just over 1/4 inch wide. So use your grid paper to measure up the width of it, and then make sure that when you score to fold this, it's going to be at least that wide, so the pen will sit in that spot. And because I know it's 1 centimeter wide, I'm going to go 1/2 centimeter either side of the central folding. So that little area in the center there, I'm going to go score 1/2 centimeter on one side of that, and then 1/2 centimeter the other side. So I'll show you that. Let me get my scoring tool in place. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Turn it around the right way for me. Okay, so that's the cutting blade. I want to score, so the gray one is the scoring blade. And what I'm going to do is, that's the central part there, right in the groove. So I'm going to line that central part up at the 1 centimeter section, which is just over yeah, that's just over, it's kind of between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. So if I line that up there best I can, hopefully you can see that. So that mark there is sitting right on the 1 centimeter, nice and flat on the top. Using the scoring tool, not the blade, I'm just going to score, wait, nope, I'm doing that wrong, told a lie. I want it to be 1 centimeter wide, so I need to do that at 1/2 centimeter. Sorry about that. So I just line that, go straight up at the 1/2 centimeter, and then I score it. And then I turn it round, and again, using that little groove there, line that up at the 1/2 centimeter. And then score it. So what that gives me is a 1 centimeter width, because I scored 1/2 centimeter away from that center there and 1/2 centimeter over there. So 2 halves equal 1 whole. So if you're doing it in inches, then you just need to figure out how many inches. It's probably 1/4 inch away. So once you do that, then fold and burnish it. And I've lost my tool. I didn't lose my bone folder. It was just hiding in the container. It was shorter than everything else. So burnish that, and then fold and burnish the other. Okay. So that's going to sit back there. And if you measured it right, it should line up perfectly. Now, the other thing we need to do is to make some inserts to hold the pen and the notepad. So what I did with that, again, it will depend on how wide you make your container. But what I did on that is I've made 2 pieces. They're 3 centimeters by about 5 centimeters. Now the height depends on how high up you want it to go. Now I did the 5 centimeters because on this one, because of the cutouts, if I did it too high, you would have seen them. So I have it just below where the cutouts are. You might be able to see on that side. See, I have the height goes just below where the cutouts are. This one, because I'm not cutting out, I could have done it higher. So it's up to you how high you want to do it, as well as how wide you need it. So if you have a wider piece of paper, so I have these little tiny notepads I got for free. So if you have a wider notepad, you might want to go further out, and then again your height will be determined by what you want to see. So you could go as far out as here, but you wouldn't want this piece because it would be noticeable at the top. So you would want a piece that's slightly shorter than how wide you're going to make it. So with this, I did it 3 centimeters and 5 centimeters high, and then I scored at 1 and 2 centimeters so I could just bend it. And I made 2 of these. So just fold and burnish that. And you're not really going to see these on the inside, so even if you use a different scrap paper, like maybe a different color, it's not really going to be that noticeable. So stick together one side first with your glue. See, that glue's not cooperating. There we go. So I'm going to glue together one side. So again, it depends on how wide you want it to be. And I know the width of mine is going to be coming here, but you could make it wider if you want. And I could have made this taller as well. So when you glue it down, you want the bottom of it to come right to the bottom, line up at the bottom of your score line there. So essentially you can, fold it over and make sure it doesn't go too far down. And that's also why using liquid glue is good. So just line that up. And then do your other one. And again, I'm just going to go on the inside of there. I could do it further out if I want, because I didn't do any little cutouts there, so it doesn't matter. So glue that down one side at a time. Now with a little scrap piece, you just have, this is 1 centimeter, so it's 3 centimeters wide, 1 centimeter deep, and I did the same thing. I scored it in the same spots. So I actually had that 6 centimeters tall, scored this, and then snipped off a centimeter off the top. Now this I'm going to put on one side, and that will help to hold the pen in place. So when I glue that there, it will give the pen somewhere to sit without wobbling over. Otherwise the pen will fall over, and depending on the height of your pen, it might fall over into your paper, so it depends. So I'm going to just put glue on both sides of that. And I did notice one side looked better than the other, so I'm going to put it on this side. So you can have a left or right-handed holder. So I'm just going to put that so it lines up just inside there. And glue that, and then come over the top and just let it sit inside there. Okay, now I can just pop some glue on this side and just fold over the top. And as long as it's going all the way down, it should be fine. So just hold it there for a second or so. You can flip it over and burnish from the inside. Yep, slid out a bit. Just kind of just hold it in place, give it a bit of a burnish, and the same for the other side. Doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to hold. That's the thing with handmade crafts, they don't have to be perfect because they're handmade. So I can see that's a bit crooked at the bottom, but it's not noticeable that much. You're not going to look at it from the sides. So that is going to be the holder for our paper and my pen. Now originally that was my plan, but as you can see when I put it together it fell over. So I knew it was going to stand very well. So that little bit we put in there keeps the pen from flopping over to the side. Okay, and there's your paper. So again, if you have wider paper, then you would want to glue your holder parts further apart so it can hold a bigger thing of paper. So that's that done. Now, I did want to do some stamping on my little calendar, and I decided to make it sort of a masculine theme because of the blues. It reminded me of the Sailing Home set and the smooth sailing dies. So I've already stamped and cut some embellishments. And this is the stamp set I was going to use just to embellish a few bits onto the calendar, just to give it some interest. And I'm going to go with the Knight of Navy. Now the thing is, you can probably see quite easily, this Knight of Navy, it does look a bit lighter than the background because it's been stamped off. So it's called generational stamping. And what you do is you stamp once and then you stamp a second time. So I've pre-stamped and cut out a few of the images. So that was stamped full strength, stamped once, and then I just stamped again without re-inking, and that gives a different look to it. So that's what we call first generation, and that's second generation. So that's stamped, and then this would be what we would stamp after stamping off. So we stamped once and then a second time. So I've done a couple just to see what I'm going to want to use to decorate with. And I did the same thing with soft suede with the anchor, which I quite like. So that was the first stamped image. So that's full strength right after inking. And then I stamped a second time straight away. And it just gives a lighter tone to it. So I'm going to stamp some onto the calendar. And I don't want to get any on my lovely background. Did you see my Christmas background? I created to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, but you might be watching this after Christmas. So some of the images I thought I would do are from that set. So I like this one, Let Hope Be, Anchor Through the Storms of Life, seeing as 2020 was a very stormy year. Now these are meant to give kind of a broken image, this stamp set. So this is full strength. Now if I stamp that straight on there, you wouldn't even be able to see the date. And that's second generation stampings. So that's the next strength, and then that's the third strength. And then you can just carry on stamping and stamping. And as you can see, it gets lighter and lighter, and it almost gives you a different look. And to make it match this better, I'm going to go with one of the other strengths, because as you can see, these dots here aren't full strength. So that's just showing you the sample of doing it. So I'm going to ink it up again. And I think I liked the third strength. So I'm just going to go. So there, you can still see the numbers, but it's got a little message there. Okay, so that's that one. And then I'm going to mix it up. That's with Knight of Navy. I'm going to mix it up with some soft suede. And I'm going to do some other images with soft suede. So I got the anchor. And again, it's really dark, full strength. So on the next calendar, I'm just going to go at a different angle, lightweight, and then maybe flip up a few pages and then do it again. So that's third generation. So it still comes out, but it gets lighter and lighter. And then I might just go a few more down and just do a different angle. And again, so it still shows through. You can still read the calendar, but it's just got a really subtle image. So that's the anchor. Now I want to do the sailboat. And I like the blue sailboat to match the one I've already done. Once again, it's going to be quite dark. So just on the scrap paper, I'm going to stamp off. And I'm just going to give a little hint of sailing off to the side. And then flip down a few pages and have another sailing off to that side. And then maybe on the end, maybe here. I'll just put one in the center. Okay, so you can still see the image, it just gets lighter and lighter. And that also, doing the stamping off helps to keep it from distracting from your main project. Also, I stamp off whenever I've used one a few times, just so then I don't have so much to clean on my cleaning pad. I don't end up with too much ink on it. And then sometimes the scrap ends up being a good thing to use later on. Now there's a few birds, so we're going to do some birds, and we're going to do them in different colors. And I think I will just put a few on different pages. So add some birds on to that page. And a few different birds there. Faint birds there. Now I want to use blue, so I'm going to clean this quickly. And so, as you can see, my chamois, it's very dirty, especially if you put the ink on it straight away. But if you cleaned it off a bit, then it's not so bad. But I use this in my classes, and quite often people ink it up too much, get it all around the edges, and then they immediately clean it, which then gets your chamois extremely dirty. So we'll just stamp off a bit there and find a page to put some birds. You can see they're quite dark there, you can't see very well. I'm going to have the birds fly right through June. And a few on September. See how much stamping you could get done? I've stamped multiple times and I still have plenty of ink on there. It just gets lighter and lighter. Looks quite nice. Okay. And just a few there in November. Okay, so for December, I'm just going to clean a few of these off before I get ink everywhere. The other thing is when you're stamping off, see, it gives you kind of an interesting look. You can always cut that paper up and use it in a project. I have seen some people use theirs in projects. So I think we'll finish with the set sail in the direction of your dreams to finish the year. And I don't want it to be too dark, so I'll put that down here. There we go. All right, so you could just leave the calendar as is, or I just like to, add a little interest to it by stamping. Okay, so that's the stamping done. So let's put our ink pads away. Nothing worse than having a project get ink on it. And having said that, my little scraps here, I used, cut them out from a piece of scrap paper here, but this is actually a card. It was a sample card I had at a class, and somebody wasn't paying attention, and when they finished with their stamp, they set their stamp right on top of my sample card. So it just went right over the front of my sample card, which therefore made it not useful anymore. And because I stamped my name on the back of my cards, I couldn't use that side either. So instead of throwing it out, I've turned it over and I'm using it as scrap to cut things out. So that's a tip for you. Do not throw your papers away. So as you can see, the back of these all have bits on them. And then I just noticed the holes haven't come out of there. So I'm not sure which of these I'm going to use in the project, but I just pre-stamped them. Okay, now take your base Now that you got your calendar stamped, you can glue your calendar onto this piece here. Now instead of putting the glue on there and it seeping through, you can just pop some glue straight onto this part. And I know that I'm going to cover up those corners. And I like this one because it gives you kind of the shape of the image I have in the background. But as I said, you can just do a rectangle if you want. So just pop some glue there. Stick my calendar down. You could use tape if you want, but glue allows you to wiggle it around a bit. And now I'm going to stick my piece down the back. Just pop some glue straight over the bottom. Again, you could do tape. And then when I put it on there, I kind of try to line it up where those curves are there. But you could put it as far back as you want, but just keep in mind it might tip over if you put it too far back. So I'm just pop it there, and because this is sort of is lined, the designer series paper has specific lines in it. I'm just trying to line it up so it appeases my senses and doesn't look out of alignment. If you are using paper that is directional, keep that in mind when you cut it, because you will see the directional paper. So if this were directional, say everything it had, say trees or something going that way, this part would be fine. This part, you'd have the trees going this way, but on the back the trees would be upside down because the way the paper goes. So you've got to keep that in mind. If you want it to use directional paper, I suggest for the section being glued on there, you only die cut half of it, cut it out, then turn the die the other way and cut it. And it's easy because you can cut it right where the lines are. You could cut straight through, and then you could have your trees going up the same direction on both sides. But keep that in mind when you're using directional paper. Okay. And now we can glue our little calendar down. And so make sure you put the backing on before you put the calendar down, because it will affect where you can put your calendar. Just give it a good press. Okay. So now I could just put the letters right on there, but I think they might get lost with the design, and in fact with my previous one it would have definitely got lost in the black, and I could have done that in green. Thinking back, maybe that would have been a better idea. I'm also thinking I should have done the letters in the mossy meadow, would have looked better, but you learn as you go. So what I did instead is I've got two pieces of cardstock, and I've measured them to fit into our punch. So this is one of our multi-punches, and it gives you different ends, and then the widths are, I believe, 1/4, 3/4, and 1 inch widths. I'm not sure what those are in centimeters. So I've cut one piece at 1 centimeter wide and another one at 1 inch wide, and the other one at 3/4 of an inch wide, so they can both go through the same side. And I want to go with this embellished side there. So as far as the width, you want them wider. You want it about as wide as the big piece, because when you cut it off, I'll show you the tip to determine how to cut the other side. So it's better to have it too long than too short. I think these ones I end up having, this is about, that's about 9.5 centimeters long, and this is 9 centimeters long. Width-wise, in centimeters, this appears to be 2 centimeters wide, and this is 2.5 centimeters wide. So slide it in. Make sure you slide it all the way in. If you're unsure, turn it over and check. So quite often I turn things over and check. And once it's all the way in, punch it out. Don't throw that piece away, because you can use that to determine placement. So if I decide, oh, I like that, and I want this one not to stick over the edge, I simply hold the piece over where I want the design to be. So if I hold this over where I want the flourish to end, then I can cut it straight down and have the exact length I want. That should make sense when I show you in a second. So quite often you can use a pencil mark to do that, or I will just use my fingernail to mark it. And just checking that that's going to be plenty of room for my calendar date to fit, which it should be. Okay. So see, I've marked it there. And now that I've marked that, I can then just snip it off roughly. And now when I put the other side in, all the way in, it comes out to the length that I want. So I want it to be slightly smaller so I can see some of that design back there. So now again with this one, slide it in. Sometimes you go at an angle to get it in. And if it doesn't fit the grooves perfectly, because sometimes I don't cut very well, you can turn it over and just eyeball where it's sitting to make sure that you're getting an even placement on either side of your strip. When you're happy with that, cut it. And again, don't throw that away, because now I want to have an even amount showing on either side. So using this, I can then decide where I want my flourish to show up. So I'm looking for that inside part there. Don't know if you can see it. Okay, there we go. So I'm looking at where that's going to cut to determine the end of the paper. So I want that to cut, I'd say, about there. And you can use a pencil, as I said, or you can just, with me, I just use a finger mark. And so how I mark that, cut the straight part off, straight as you can. And then when I slide it in this time, slide it in, turn it over, make sure it's lining up where you want it to be. And now this should give me a nice border. Nice border around. Sorry, didn't notice. Okay, so that's how I use that tool. There's lots of other tips and videos about other ways to do it. Let's get you back to normal. There we go. So now that we've got that set, we'll glue this piece on. And the other nice thing with the dies that I used for the base, I discovered, but I've already given that sample away, the little flourishes at the edges, these little flourish dies, you could actually, on the biggest one, you can actually then run it through the die cut and get the little holes cut out on the edge there, because that piece fits perfectly in the largest die cut, and you could probably slide it down to the smaller one. So if you want to add a little extra little design element, you can do that. So now let's glue our letters down. Letters, keep calling them letters, they're numbers. But it's best if you just kind of eyeball it first. Dry test it before you put the liquid on there. So you just kind of figure out where you want your letters, your numbers. Keep calling them letters. You want your numbers to go. And start at either end and then fill in the center. That way you can add some gap in the center if you need to. Another thing you could have done is if you use this with our double-sided adhesive pad to cut the numbers out, you could have had them raised up. So I'm just going to set this, and using the liquid glue allows me a bit of wiggle room. So I just wiggle that into place, and then I'm going to put the one at the other side, and then I will fill in the two in the center. Just a little bit of glue, and so we'll put the one. When I first created this project about a month ago, I was trying to figure out something different to do for my calendars. I was silly and I cut out 2020 and then I was putting it together and went, wait a minute, something's not right, and I realized I didn't do a 1, I did a 0, so I was stuck in this year, which I don't think many people want to be stuck in this year. So that way I kind of can see where to put the other bits. So, yep, a bit too much there. I use the tip to help spread things around if it gets too messy. Now there's not a lot of leeway on the white cardstock here, because it is the 3/4 inch, where this one, it was the 1 inch width, so I had much more leeway to play with for the calendar date. And you could just make this just with a nice message at the top and no actual date on it, and then every year they could just get a new mini calendar to pop on the bottom if you want. That would work. That would make it a timeless project. Okay, so there we go. 2021, here we come, yay. So there, I am going to pop it up with a few dimensionals. Get one in each corner and one in the center. And then I will decorate it. Now, having not done this one before, I'm not sure what I'm going to put where. But so I want to put that I'll probably put it between the dots on either side. Okay. So now I'm going to decorate it, and I was just thinking of maybe putting the sailboat up on one side and an anchor on the other, maybe the other way around. I kind of like the faded one better. But you can decorate it however you'd like. Could even do some sailboats up here and the anchors down the bottom. Okay, a couple anchors. I'm not sure. That's the part that takes the longest, of trying to figure out how to decorate. I think I will just go with the lighter ones on the back. So again, I'm going to put dimensionals on them. But I've got to see where I want to put it before I put the dimensional on there so it doesn't go off the side. So I will just pop one at the bottom. And then I think half one at the top. So if you haven't ever cut your dimensionals in half, it makes them last longer and they fit projects better. So just snip straight through your dimensionals and you get half ones, quarter ones, whichever size, or you can use the mini dimensionals. So I'm just going to pop that guy there. And I think I'll pop my anchor over here. This one I will use the minis because they're just smaller and they'll fit the anchor better. I'm just thinking I should probably add some of that rope that came with the set. So just pop that so you can see a bit of color. Okay, so I could carry on doing more decorating, you know, maybe do another ship here or something. You can go overboard with the decorating. But that's just showing you how to do it. And so that's how it would sit at the desk. And that is it, just sitting down. And each month has something different in it. So that's your little desk calendar notepad. And so with this one, I just took some extra designer series paper and measured around the pen, so depending on what size pen you want, measured the length, cut it to length, and then just used double-sided tape to put that. So it was basically a rectangle that I just rolled around the pen just to give it a bit more interest. And so that is the Magnolia Lane one, and this is the Sailing Home set. So I hope you like that. I could maybe put some Night of Navy on there, or as you can see with the extra paper, I could just put some around the edge, roll that around the edge. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel to see more projects in the future. If you live in New Zealand and would like to buy any of these products and do not already have a demonstrator, I'd be quite happy to sell you any of those. You can go to my website at michellekritchley.stampitup.net. If you don't live in New Zealand, go online and look up a demonstrator near you or contact your demonstrator to buy the products. This designer paper, series paper, is no longer available, but this paper and this stamp set is current, so you can get your hands on those. As far as the pens and the pads of paper, you can usually pick them up at some, dollar shops. I ended up getting mine free from a project event I was involved in. So I hope you like that. I do have a blog, papercraftaddiction.blogspot.co.nz, that I show close-ups and measurements and explain a bit further about projects. And please tell others about it. And thanks so much. Have a very happy holidays and stay safe. Thanks for watching. Bye.